Hello, hello. Happy Monday. Hope your week is starting out okay. Happy July, too. We're in a new month, and Thursday is the 4th of July. Woohoo! Yay, America. Can't wait to celebrate you. Okay, this is just a little check in and kind of some journaling that I do about some thoughts, the thoughts I've been having lately, etc. I don't know that I'll do an open panel today. I don't think I'm going to stay on very long. The another issue is, and maybe somebody can help me out with this. I'm on this mic. This is the mic that everybody tells me this is another mic that everybody tells me they have issues with. Sometimes they say it's too close or too far, so I'm going to keep it close, but if it's causing issues, please let me know in the comments. Um, the laptop is going out, or the fan or something. It's been making this big buzzing noise like an electric razor or a vacuum. It's very, very loud. So I have to stay off of the fancy mic right now because it's going to pick up all that noise. So I'm working through some tech issues here lately too. So that may limit the amount of streaming I'm going to do. Plus, I need to focus on other things. Okay, all that being said, today I want to let's go back to our chart. This thing. We've talked about the primitive instincts, aggression, mainly on panel, mainly aggression. It shows up as aggression. Sometimes defensiveness, which is a form of aggression, self-preservation, can certainly be a part of aggression and vice versa. So let's just say the aggressive instincts. We've also talked about these things called overexcitabilities, which also have an emotional component to them, imaginational and intellectual. In addition to psychomotor, which you see on stream all the time. So this is a map of kind of my neurotype. Remember, autism are technically PDD, NOS, ADHD, primarily hyperactive. Again, the energy, the psychomotor, overexcitability, and giftedness, which is a combination of that is what I consider my neurotype. We talked about how these overexcitabilities are these dynamisms of which overexcitabilities form a part can help to loosen up some of that socialization, or in some cases, like mine, the socialization, if it's not that strong to begin with, doesn't really set in much to begin with. So I'm still kind of part wild or feral or part natural, my natural state. So that's what I want to talk about, these excitabilities. It, especially, but first I want to introduce another concept from psychology called reactance. I'm going to read the Wikipedia definition. You can Google it. It's an unpleasant motivational reaction to offers, persons, rules, or regulation that threaten or eliminate specific behavioral freedoms. Reactance occurs when an individual feels that an agent is attempting to limit one's choice of response and or range of alternatives. For me, it's that restriction of expression. So this is the policing that's been happening with me on the panels lately. The policing of the intellect, the policing of the emotions, policing of content, policing of sometimes it's how I come across, etc. But there's all kind of things that get policed, and I want to look into this reactance a little bit further because there's several types. There's something called state reactance, and state reactance. This is from the AI Gemini. State reactance is a temporary psychological state that's triggered by a specific situation. It describes the unpleasant motivational reaction somebody experiences when they feel their freedom of choice is being threatened or eliminated. And in my case, my freedom to express, my freedom to think, my freedom to inquire, my freedom to feel. Um, Plus, I'm socially retarded anyway. Like my social awareness is very poor. So if there are norms, I don't know how to fit these excitabilities into the norms. So that works against me too, as far as perceived freedom, because this stuff there's several components to it that they break down. So let's take a look at those. Um, there's a situational trigger to it. And so somebody is attempting to restrict or constrain, or what I call police. It arises in response to a particular event or interaction. The key trigger is the perception that someone or something is trying to limit their options or dictate their behavior. So it doesn't necessarily have to be what's actually happening. The people that are policing don't necessarily have to, in their minds, be aware they're policing or intend to policing. All that matters is my perception that I'm being policed for the reactance to happen. And there's a motivation to regain freedom. It's a temporary state that fuels a desire to resist the perceived pressure and reclaim their sense of autonomy. This is exactly what is happening in these cases of policing that I'm encountering and have encountered outside of the real world as well. Um, Supposedly there's four components that you need to have reactance, and that was what I described was state reactance. And that's what you see happening on the panels. It's particular events, particular incidents that's causing that reaction in me. Now there's something called trait reactance, which is it's a personality trait or a personality characteristic that operates the exact same way. It's someone's tendency to perceive situations as threats to their freedom. People high in trait reactance are more likely to resist any attempt at influence, even well-meaning advice or request, because they see it as a control tactic. That's that defensiveness that I sometimes get accused of. I'm presenting this because I'm leading up to a different take on this from my end. Um, but anyway, that is that defensiveness, that reactivity when I sense that my freedom, because in America, one thing I love about being American is there's just certain freedoms I take for granted. And one of them is the freedom to say whatever the hell I want to say and to ask, and within the parameters currently established by our legal system, Supreme Court, etc. I'm happy with the constraints where they are. I'm not trying to yell fire at a theater or incite violence or anything like that. I'm trying to process. I'm trying to learn and understand the world around me, the people around me, particularly the social reality around me, because I don't have this ability to intuitively tune into it or pick up on it. So we don't have, up here in Seattle, everything is nonverbal. Like conversation and verbal interaction with the people around you is discouraged. They have this whole system of nonverbal cues that they read to navigate. And if you try to do it verbally, you're kind of violating some sort of social norm and you stand out. Verbal is the only way I have to navigate through the world. I don't see the nonverbal, or if I see it, I have no idea what it means. So it doesn't work for me as a channel of information to help me interface with the world. So I rely on my verbal. I rely on the ability to ask questions, etc. And I take that for granted. That's like one of my norms that I take for granted. And if you notice on my panel, I let people talk. I let people say what they have to say. I let people ask questions. I answer questions. It's very Socratic dialogue. Conversation and dialogue is what I grew up on. It's how I learned. My culture is a very oral culture. They pass on stories and traditions orally from one generation to the next. So I'm wired for that, and I need to be able to have that just as just taken for granted. So I do assume that kind of freedom anywhere I go. Also, I've talked before about where I come from. We don't have a concept of emotional regulation or an emotional speed limit. The emotion is whatever level it's at, and I mean, what is anyone supposed to do about it? Just let the person have their emotion and then you can dialogue about it from there. So I also take for granted that I'm going to be allowed to have a certain level of emotional intensity. And so because this trait reactance works on, this reactance concept works on perception and assumptions and expectations. Those are my starting assumptions and expectations for being an American, being Cajun from South Louisiana, et cetera, cultural, and also neurologically. I have no lower setting on any of this. I can't turn down my curiosity, my intelligence, my drive to know and understand. It's at the lowest when you're encountering it at its most irritating. That's at the lowest setting that I could possibly have it on. Same with the emotions. So let's look at these four requirements to have reactance. Okay, reactance can only occur when an individual believes they have control or freedom over the outcome. That's absolutely the case with me. When I go into a new social situation or onto a new panel, I believe that I have freedom over my intellectual and emotional outcomes. So what I just described, that kind of baseline norm that I need and that I assume as an American, a Louisianian, etc., that requirement is met. Reactance to a threat will only be as great as the perceived importance of the freedom. If the freedom being threatened is very important, reactance to it will also be great. Oh, isn't that interesting? I wonder if my ability to be intellectual and ask questions and critique and analyze is very important to me. And I wonder if these emotional reactions with the intelligence that they contain in them, that I use the intellect that I have to extract from, I wonder if that is so fundamentally important to me as a person, looking at that personality map, that could be why the reactance is so great to having that police are restricted or socialized. I'm 53 years old. Nobody needs to raise me. If how I show up is not to your taste or your liking or how you were raised, let me know and I'll just leave. There's no need to keep policing things that are completely normal to me and other autistic, gifted, ADHD, and neurodivergent people and men. Because a lot of what's getting policed, I notice, is getting policed from men. And I suspect it has something to do with the stigma against masculinity, men, and male emotions as well. Okay, the third component, the greater the number of freedoms that are threatened, the greater will be the reactance. It says if they're asked to stop drinking alcohol, the reactance may be greater than if they're asked to drink in moderate amounts. So if I'm asked to stop asking questions, stop having an intense emotional reaction, and stop rocking all at the same time, the reactance is going to be greater than if it's just one of those little things. So usually I'm reacting to a pattern. It's a composite of stimuli that I'm picking up at all at once. Or as a number 4, the implication. The reactance may also increase if there's implications of other threats. So if someone's policing my question asking, they're probably going to start policing my emotions. Or if they start policing my emotions, they're probably going to have an issue with something else. So it starts to become like this associative chain that you're reacting to. So I definitely have this state reactance in particular situations, and I probably have some of that trait reactance because I've never I'm very sensitive to being told what to do, to being ordered, commanded, even things like TV commercials where they say things like, come on down now and check out I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me where to go. Don't tell me what to check out. Don't tell me any of that stuff. I will decide that for myself. My whole nervous system just lights up when I hear that. So that's undoubtedly some of that trait reactance. But with people like me, and by people like me, I mean neurodivergent, male, Cajun, passionate, temperamental, raw, fierce, fiery, part feral, etc., yet still perfectly capable of existing in civilized society and contributing to it, I believe. You have these things called, I call them excitabilities. In fact, we'll get to that. Um, I'm taking this initially from the website called positivedisgregation.com. In fact, I'll put the link. By the way, I'm not looking at. I'll tell you what. I'll take a break and look at comments. Absolutely anti-authoritarian. That is the Satanism right there. It's opposition against pointless and arbitrary authority. I have no problem with authority that is legitimate. I agree to submit to a certain amount of state authority by just being a citizen here in the United States. I have no problem with legitimate authority. It is pointless and arbitrary. It's when some random person assumes authority. And on the case of panels, the panel host is absolute dictator. They have authority. My problem is I'm not able to identify ahead of time which panels, because I go on these panels. The number one reason I go on these panels, it is not to get my numbers up. It is not to get subscribers. Those are going to come at their own pace in their own way. And that's how I want it anyway. It is to grow community. It is to extend what I'm doing here into to other parts of the Panoverse so that we can start to form a larger community because we seem to share similar values. So when I do that, I'm there in good faith thinking that this is a community building attempt. And that is my only motivation for going on these panels. Um, and so when all of this happens on these panels, it it throws me off in my like my whole community building project, and it makes me revisit and I need to reorient, like figure this out and reorient on that because I'm hitting these walls lately consistently, and I think they're related around these overexcitabilities. And maybe the community I'm trying to build is not a community that can sustain that, and I need to make sure that it can. So maybe I'm trying to build the wrong community, I guess is what I'm getting at. Um, okay, let me get back to these. Okay, so Dabrowski, this is kind of where the theory comes from, or he was the first to introduce the concept and identify it. And actually, his word for it is super stimulability. He's Polish, so he wrote in Polish, and it's the Polish word for stimulability and super, an excess of stimulability. So a greater propensity to be stimulated to a high degree of intensity is how I would translate it. Um, he identified the 5 types: the psychomotor, the sensual or sensory, also what I call the aesthetic, emotional, intellectual, and imaginational. And these predispose individuals to experience life more intensely. Overexcitabilities contribute to the disintegration of that socialization, that initial socialization, by heightening sensitivity and awareness. So I'm more aware. I've always tried to explain this to people. They think I'm like hyper emotional and hypersensitive and I'm overreacting to everything, but the reaction is there. That's the part of the process they're seeing, is the reaction. The reaction is because I'm noticing all this stuff that other people don't seem to be noticing. So if you're noticing things that other people aren't, I'm having a reaction to what I'm noticing. If other people were noticing these things too, they may also be having the same reaction. But because I'm the one noticing them, the reaction is a response to what I'm perceiving. So the overexcitabilities contribute to this disintegration by heightening sensitivity and awareness. There's a perceptual heightening in there as well. The prefixed over attached to excitability serves to indicate that the reactions of excitation are over and above average in intensity, duration, and frequency. So it's referenced against the average. It's referenced against that middle of the curve, and that is what most socialization is designed to address, is that middle of the curve. So I'm already outside of the range that society is designed to socialize you toward. Now, other than like very early childhood experiences, we're talking like Head Start, kindergarten. By first grade, I was socialized just fine. I was ahead of my class. Um, the teachers were making sure I got all the like educational stuff I needed. I was very well behaved. I was in Boy Scouts, altar boy, etc. So whatever initial socialization was there was enough for. Of course, it was Louisiana. It was. I don't know if it was a more of a male culture, but I don't remember males being a big deal back then. Like everybody bitching about males growing up. So I don't think it was a. I don't think the male thing was an issue. And then they had all the gifted and enrichment programs for the intellectual stuff. So rural South Louisiana in the 70s could somehow accommodate these excitabilities better than modern progressive liberal Washington State and the internet. All right. I think that's, let me make sure that's, okay. The next thing I want to do is share this screen and I'll put this article too. It's an article that kind of describes the excitabilities. And I promise I'll get to comments in just a sec. I hope my mic's okay at least. The only reason I can't do comments and talk at the same time is because it throws my train off the track every time I try to do it. All right, here we go. This is just a little summary of, of the excitabilities that I want to go over some of. Okay, psychomotor, that's the rocking. That's if in clinical terms, in today's clinical terms, it would be called ADHD PH. The way they classify AD, it used to be ADD, it became ADHD, and now it's ADHD PI or PH, primarily inattentive or primarily hyperactive. Mine is primarily hyperactive. It's a excess of energy relative to that norm. I've always had, since I was a kid, an enormous amount of energy, but so did half the people around me. I mean, we grew up in the country. All the boys were running around, playing. We wrestled in the dirt. I climbed trees all the time. We ran, we swam, we jumped, all that stuff. So having energy was normal. I guess until you move to a city. So that's the psychomotor. The sensual. You hear a lot of autistic people talk about the sensory, like sensitivities, and that's the one thing I actually don't have. Or if I have it, it's not an unpleasant symptom to me. I'm not very visual at all. My smell and touch and taste seem to be normal. I'm very auditory. I can listen to music for hours and process. I think it was Leibniz that said that music is the pleasure that we get from counting without realizing or being aware that we're counting. I could listen to music all day long. It gives me such a mental, psychological, emotional pleasure. The same with listening to people talk, listening to stories, listening to podcasts. I take in my world through it. I'm logocentric. It's kind of auditory textual. It's because I'm hyperlexic too. It's words, sounds. That's my version of the sensual overexcitability. This is the one I want to focus on though, the intellectual. Hang on. Extreme desire to seek understanding, gain knowledge, and to analyze and categorize information. Critical, analytical, and highly curious, frequently thinking for thinking's sake. Okay, it says extreme desire, but this is my normal. This is my starting point. I wake up half asleep doing this, automatic, just going at its peak level when I wake up. This doesn't get turned off ever. This is my baseline. There's no off switch. There's no low setting. I notice what I notice. I make the connections I make. I draw the conclusions I draw, etc. That's happening constantly in my head. That's part of what being gifted is, autistic, ADHD. This is normal for me. I can't go anywhere where this is reacted against or policed are seen as a negative. I need to, if whatever this community is I'm building, this is one of the cornerstones of it. It absolutely has to be. I'm building a community for intelligent people or people that respect intelligence. This is a what is a red line, deal breaker thing. I don't know any other way around it. I came into the world with this. It's as much a part of me as the gay is. There's no way around it. All right. Imaginational is just the creativity. For me, it takes the form of the vision I have for the channel, the community, my life. Um, that's where my imagination gets stimulated and exercised. Okay, and here we come to the emotional. This is the other one. I've talked about how for me, intellect and emotion and the imagination is in there, kind of mediating between the two. That little complex. And real quick, let's switch over to the chart because this is important. See how he groups these three right here? Emotional, imaginational, intellectual. There's a reason for that because, in fact, let me see if I could pull up. One second. Nope. I'll have to find it later. There's another website that it came off of, but there's a reason that those are so important in personal growth. Those three. For me, they're kind of one mental phenomena or experience or activity. So, and I've talked about this before, any attempt to inhibit or suppress or restrict the emotions also inhibits or suppresses the intellect as well, because the emotions are what I am using. That's what the intellect is working off of. It's kind of translating emotion into intellect. That's one of the perceptual tools I use to get the data that the intellect processes. So I have to have all of it. So here we have emotional excitability, extreme experience of emotions, complex emotions. I've talked about that on the stream before, about how you can have basic emotions like fear, shame, guilt, anger that kind of get combined to create these higher emotions. And we looked at some of them, in fact, on one of the episodes, and forms very strong attachments with people, places, objects. That's my passion. That is whatever I do, I pour my whole self into. And so I take very personally because it's very close to me. Um, oh, sorry. I forgot to reshare the screen. Here, just take a look real quick. This emotional, extreme experience of emotions, complex emotions, etc. Okay, I think I want to look at one more thing. So this is me, this is my neurodivergence, this is my masculinity, this is my cultural back. This is everything that's part of me. Just like the gay, I didn't compromise a single inch with the gay stuff as far as being what I was. There was some people that would try to convince me to downplay or tone it down or try something heterosexual just to make sure, or that I never gave in to any of that. Like, this is the gay I am, this is the level of gay I am. I'm not restricting it in any way to make somebody feel comfortable or happy. And it turns out that was the right thing to do. That's the conclusion that almost all the other gay people came to. We decided to kind of stake our claim, live as openly as gay people, whatever that meant. And I have learned to do the same with all my other identities. In fact, I had a lot of uh, societal help with it, with the gifted identity, growing up. I've got to say, Louisiana, and not even urban Louisiana, did a really good job with the giftedness. Now, they didn't know about the rest of the neurodivergence back then. That really came out more in the 90s. They did a really good job in establishing a healthy identity for the giftedness. We looked at that identity formation model with validation, affirmation, affiliation, and affinity. They help provide all of that. And then the gay, I had enough support then. We had a gay bar to establish a healthy identity around that, because I never thought there was anything wrong with it. I didn't internalize all that shame and guilt around it. that other people had. I was outgrowing my Catholicism about the same time that I was hitting puberty. So it all kind of happened at once. Um, I transitioned from kind of innocent Catholic boy to sexually awakened, more scientific oriented teenager. And it was just kind of a transition that made sense, and it didn't cause me any anxiety. I didn't look back. Just like it was just like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. It was that smooth. And um yep, I lost it. Hang on. It'll come back. Oh yeah, so I've been trying to do the same thing with the autism. I'm sitting here with deer antlers on, rocking in a chair back and forth, completely openly, like it's normal, because for me it is. I'm trying to do the same thing with masculinity, male emotions, male needs, male norms. So any identity I have, I know how to normalize it and create a space for that identity to be normal. And that is what I'm trying to do here. And part of that normalization is saying, I'm a nerd. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions and be nosy and curious and want to understand a topic. So if that's not what you're looking for, don't have me on your panel. I'm passionate and intense. I have strong emotional reactions to things because that's part of my perception and intellectual processing of them. And that's not going anywhere. So if that's a problem for you, don't have me on your panels. I kind of mean to imply all of this to be associated under the label of Satanism anyway. So when people hear Satanism, that some of that would be conveyed in that, but for some reason they keep getting thrown off. Like they expect something different from a Satanist than what's showing up on these panel. Strong, intense, fiery emotions, and Satanism. I'm working on a history of Satanism, which I hope to present soon. But Satanism, believe it or not, is part of the Western intellectual tradition, going back not to the Christian or Jewish Bible, especially the Jewish Bible, but to Socrates, to Greek rationalism, and before that, there's even Homeric and Babylonian and Assyrian roots. So my Satanism is situated squarely in the Socratic tradition and the Romantic tradition, which we finally get valorization and a positive perspective on strong emotions. So I think that's it. Let me see if I'm going to look at comments and then I'll figure out if I want to do a panel or not. This is where I'm at with that. I've taken a laptop apart before. I actually have my college degree, believe it or not. I have an associate's degree in electronics technology. It was the 90s. The computer industry was taking off. I was a humanities major, and my thinking was, I kept changing my major. I had like 5 or 6 majors, and I'm like, you have got to get out of here. You cannot stay in college for four more years. Pick a major and get yourself out of college and into the workforce. And I went through the catalog and I said, which major is going to get me out of here the fastest? Because I already had a couple of years of courses. And it turned out to be electronics technology. I could get out in like a year and a half. And this was my rationalization. It's the computer age. It's a very practical choice. I'm not going to have any problem getting a job or making money. Let me just be practical. I can get the humanities stuff on my own. And so I switched to electronics technology, and I have never set foot in any kind of workplace remotely related to it. The degree is so obsolete by now. But it has me a little familiar with computers. And I even had to like create a computer trip and solder it. I had to design the circuit. You have to you buy this little board, this copper board, and you have to use this acid and eat away the parts that are not the circuit and then solder I did all that. And I graduated college doing it. Ask me if I know how to do any of it today. But what I think I can do is undo about 10 little laptop screws on the back and take a look at that fan and figure out how to maybe readjust it to where it's blowing more smoothly. And I'm thinking about doing that. The risk is if I fuck it up, I may not have a laptop to stream on for a while. Hey, Dirt. Bex, good to see you. Have you ever done? Oh no, my diet is very poor right now. I'm on a bachelor diet. I'm on a whatever I could cook in the microwave type of diet right now. I'm in a food desert. The nearest grocery store is a mile away. But diet is a long-term goal that I plan to address when I'm able to. His antlers got clipped. Oh shit, I forgot the antlers. I didn't even notice. I meant to do all of that with the antlers on. Man, I'm already slipping. Our concept of authority came from the Romans, at least the way we understand it in the modern West. Let me look up the etymology for it. Author, authority. Let's see. Because I know that in the educational system in the Latin, like late Roman Empire, early Middle Ages, they had the auctores, which was part of their educational system, and they were all of the writers and thinkers that had the selection of it that had been preserved for them at least. Um, and they had it was the canon basically, the auctores from Old French. Authority, prestige, right, permission, dignity, gravity, the scriptures. Those in charge, those with police powers, comes from mid 19th century, meaning person and authority. So it was more like intellectual authority because it came from an author. It was authorized. Authority, book or quotation that settles an argument. Right. Like when I keep saying, like asking for sources, that's referring to the authority of a source. Or evidential authority. Like that's yes, I like that meaning of it. Right, I agree. There is what's called the authority of expertise. We talk about this in our men's group. We talk about hierarchies and competence hierarchies. There's like it's like established hierarchies that can exist, but there's also these fluid hierarchies, and competence hierarchies can be one of them, where you defer to the person who's better at the thing. So if you're on a camping trip and somebody knows how to cook, they're at the top of the cooking competence hierarchy. If you know how to fish better, you're at the bottom of the fish hierarchy. And somebody else could come along with a different set of skills that could change the hierarchy. So it's very fluid. And one of those forms of competence hierarchies is expertise, the authority of expertise. Somebody that's more expert in a field, we could perhaps, for reasons, give more authority to than somebody who's not. And sometimes I will defer to the authority of expertise. That's not a state form of authority, but it's a form of authority that I can self-determine whether to defer to or not. And in many cases, I do, especially if they've established ethos or credibility for their expertise. Shedding. Oh, I guess I shed early this or late this year. Sorry about that. Um, panel. Hey, Christian. I don't know. Is there a desire for a panel? I'm 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 kind of skittish about the social stuff lately, believe it or not, even on my own panel. I created this as part of a mission to be helpful and contribute to society and civilization and not just be a leech off of it. And I, I hate being the problem child and I want to be helpful. And for a while, I felt like I was like 60% helpful and maybe 40% irritating. And now lately, I feel like I'm 90% a nuisance and a problem child and actually harmful to people because I'm just totally disrupting their norms and like 10% helpful. So I'm trying to get that equilibrium back. So I'm going to stay on my own panel, try to build up a sense of being helpful again, and go from there. And so I don't want to just let random people on and have them be damaged by me. I want to make sure they're, if people want to come on and talk, they have to be able to have an intelligent conversation, a dialogue. And there's plenty of past examples on these panels of me being able to do that with many, many people. Before I did open panels, my whole channel was an interview style where I would have people on for an hour, hour and a half, and we'd have a rational Socratic dialogue. So you have to be able to do that if you want to come on. I guess we're doing new rules. You have to be able, it's fine for you to have your emotions. Y'all have never, if you've seen me shut down somebody's emotion or police somebody's emotion, please make me aware of it, because I can't think of a time where I would do that. You're welcome to come on here and have your emotions. Just don't try to mess with mine. Let me have mine as well. This is a panel for men to talk about what they need to talk about. So I'm going to prioritize men needing to talk about mental health or something in their life, or even if they just want to share something that's on their mind. So men can come up here and talk when they need to. If it's mental health related, if it's related to neurodivergence, I absolutely want to make space for that and room for that. Panel drama, there's so many other channels that you can talk about that on. I have a Discord server with the channel specifically devoted to panel drama, and we talk about it in there all the time. I think I want to save the streams for people that need it for other things, for personal things, for themselves. If you have an interesting topic you want to present or discuss, debate, have a dialogue about, please, more of that. I want to orient this channel toward men and the things that men are not getting in other places. I want them to be able to get here because I need that too. So let's all try to give it to each other. I still want to grow community. I think I'd rather, if people that are suggesting panels, I think I'd rather have them come on my panel first for a few times and establish some kind of rapport and comfort and trust before I just go crash their panels, because that's not been working lately. So I still want to do the community building. I just want to do it in a different way. So if there is anybody that wants to come up and talk about something important to them or specific, I think the third place kind of panels, the kind of hangout panels, I'm gonna limit for a little while. I may still do them here and there, but I need to get something more targeted to me and the people I'm trying to help. So. Other than that, Bex, do you know what the plan is? Are y'all doing an episode maybe? We have a little survivor group going. Also, I'm thinking about starting the Killing Fields. It's a true crime series set in Louisiana, and I normally don't like true crime at all, but it's too true for me. I love the fictional stuff. Like I could watch a good Scandi Noir series. I could binge watch that in a day. But the true crime stuff hits a little too close to home. But this one is very tasteful and well done. Some very interesting, rich, three-dimensional characters, particularly the two cops that investigate. And it's kind of a look at small town life through these murders, and more than it is an investigation. But they do go into a lot of good police procedural detail too, which I found interesting and I like. So I might start that today too, if there's interest in that. Other than that, we'll be hanging out on Discord, and I don't know when I'll show up again. Like I said, I'm trying to do several things. I'm trying to do self-care. I'm also trying to focus on important life stuff that I need to focus on, and I'm still not currently focusing on. And I need to kind of reorient. Oh, okay. Reorient this project too. So, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that today. Then we can go start Survivor and Killing Fields. I actually have to run some errands, but I might save it for later because closer to this evening. So yeah, let's do that. We'll just meet in the Discord. We do have a Discord. We hang out there. We watch Survivor a lot because in fact, the season we're watching now is one of the older ones, old timey Survivor, like I call it. Um, it's Survivor Amazon, and it is the first time that they did a tribe of all men and all women. So it's fascinating to watch these gender dynamics from 20 years ago compared to today. Some of them are very familiar, and some of them are like, I'm not sure they would even show that today. So we're enjoying that, and then we watch all kind of stuff, documentaries, series. I have philosophical and literary documentaries I throw in there sometimes. So anyway, point is we have a lot of fun in the Discord, and we also have a lot of conversation that's a little more intimate and community oriented that we can't necessarily have on stream or don't necessarily have on stream. So check us out there. Contact me for an invite if you need that. I want to run my little banner across the screen just to get into practice. We're currently trying to reach 500 to get monetized. So if you could like, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word. I created this channel to be part of the solution to the mental health crisis, particularly the men's mental health crisis. We have the highest rates of suicide, etc. So this is trying to be something more than just a YouTube channel. It's part of a community building project and support network. So with that said, I think I'm going to bid you good day. Thank you all, and I will be back at some time in the future. If not today, I'll try to check in again tomorrow. All right, everyone, take care, and keep being you. I love every one of you. So far, I mean that those who I don't like know who they are, and if you're not one of those people, I very much appreciate all of you.